Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. This is episode 301, and we're going to talk about positive and negative rights. So I was listening to Blowhard Bernie Sanders yesterday, and it reminded me about the difference between positive and negative rights. I know I've talked about rights before. I couldn't find it in any of the recent episodes. It wasn't in the title. And so I'm guessing that I might have brought it up in a sermon, the difference between positive and negative rights. But it's worth going over again. And so here it is tonight. So negative and positive rights are clearly different and they are often conflated. In other words, they are all often combined and they're all considered just simply rights. So no one says, "Oh, I want my positive rights." No, people say, "I have a right." And so what is the difference? So positive rights are things which require other people to work for you in order for you to have it, but you're not going to pay them. Negative rights are things which do not require other people to do work for you in order for you to have it, so there's no one to pay. Okay. So positive and negative rights. And so the names are confusing because generally positive is a word we use and is associated with something that's good, and negative is bad. But negative rights are the good things, and positive rights are the fictional rights. They have the label rights, but they aren't actually rights. And so to flesh it out a little bit, examples of positive rights. If someone says, "Hey, I have a right to free healthcare," well, it means that someone has to provide that healthcare for you for free. If you say, "I have a right to free food," it means that someone has to feed you without being paid. If you have a right to free housing, well, you get the idea, right? So someone has to make the house, someone has to do work in order for you to have it, right? So it's not like, well, I have a right to do this, and so all of you suckers have to do something for me. That's what about their rights? What about their rights to be able to work and be compensated for that? And, what's so interesting is that a lot of the people who fight for positive rights, your AOCs and your Bernies out there, they only consider people who they consider to be oppressed and disadvantaged, and they don't look at the other side of the equation, particularly when they are part of the crowd that's on the other side of the equation, right? So Bernie, who's is the number one recipient of pharmaceutical company donations, even though he denies it, he's straight up lying, right? And I know in his reply, he, tried to reword it in such a way that no, he's not receiving money from pharmaceutical companies. He's receiving money from the people who work for pharmaceutical companies. It's just so goofy. And it was very weak. Hopefully, everyone saw right through it. And so basically what's happening is that they pretend or, they might even believe that they're championing the position of the underclass, but in reality, they're just simply enriching another class of people. And so, although people like the AOCs and the Bernie Bros like to pretend that they are moral or high-minded, but really, if you're in the know, and I've been trying to push this theme of the more you know, the more you realize, okay, something is not true, something is wrong, something is hypocritical, right? And so if you keep thinking in that way, then you realize that people who don't get it, people who are all about the positive rights, it's an indication of a lack of education or a lack of knowledge, which results in narrow-mindedness, right? They're fixated on homelessness or food insecurity, but the solutions that they propose are all fall along the lines of positive rights. Somebody's got to do it. Okay, so who's going to pay for it? Who's going to provide it? All those rich people, which never includes them, right? Because they're politicians, and so they can't provide any services. They can't build houses. They can't provide health care or provide food. And the people who do, like the Rand Pauls and the Thomas Masseys, who actually do things beyond their political the time they have to spend doing politics in Washington, D.C., right? They do provide free health care. They go to other countries and, help people for free, right? And so they do it voluntarily out of their own choice. And so these are negative rights, okay? They're exercising their negative rights, which actually is still a high cost, right? The charity that Rand Paul engages in is actually very expensive, but he's willing to donate that time and energy for the benefit of other people. So a lot of the Burning Bros and the AOCs of the world, they can only see one side of the equation, the intended beneficiaries of their high-mindedness, right? Their narrow-mindedness. But most of the things, if not all, that they advocate for, not only are they coercive, right? You're forcing other people to work and not get compensated, or you're forcing them to work and their compensation comes from taxation, right? Subsidies in the form of subsidies and grants and things like that. And so basically, it all comes down to some aspect of moral hazards and rent seeking, right? And so moral hazard becomes an issue, or rent seeking becomes an issue because of this so-called high-mindedness, where, it's better to be morally uh, true than to be factually correct, that kind of goofy logic. So, what is a moral hazard? A moral hazard is a situation where bad choices are rewarded or incentivized, right? So, if you quit your job, you can qualify for welfare because you're not making as much. If you get a divorce, then your wife is now a single mother, and so now she qualifies for free housing, things like that. And so, you go from struggling, and if you get a little bit worse, right, you're incentivized to make your life a little bit worse. So then you qualify for all these welfare benefits, which you can never come off of. It's very hard to come off of all of those benefits that you receive. And I talked about this a long time ago, right? That several years ago, before the lockdowns, if you were living in New York and you're a family of four, single parent, you receive almost what, $80,000 in benefits, right? Well, if you were to try to come off of welfare, right, then you would have to find a job that paid you, I don't know, $100,000, $120,000 at least, right? Because all your free time is gone, right? So you were receiving welfare, you could do anything you want, and you got that money. But now, right, you have to work 30, 40 hours a week, right? And then you still have all the other things that you want to do. And so you have to make substantially more if you're going to want to come off of welfare. But most people who are on welfare will never get a job that pays that much. And so you're trapped. And that's why they call it a welfare trap. And so you can see that, single parent families are, compensated. They've received more in welfare. And so families are incentivized to break up, and which is why you see so many single parent homes, and why there was an explosion of that kind of phenomena once the country declared war against poverty. Now, rent seeking is basically running the simplest way to understand this is running a contest where the prize is money. So a lot of people will expend a lot of time and energy to win the prize, but only one person will win, right? So everyone else wasted their time. It's sort of like a research paper prize at a college. And large universities will do this to inspire people to use the library. Research is fun. Get in those card catalogs or the computerized card catalogs and do some research, and learn something. So let's just assume that in a large university, call it 50,000 students, 100 of those students do research to try to win the prize. And they really want to do it. They think they got the ability to do it. And so each of them work, let's just say 20 hours to try to win the $1,000 prize that's being offered, right? And so 100 people, not knowing how many other people are going for the prize, they each spend about 20 hours because some people spent a lot more than 20 hours because they really want to win. So on average, we'll call it 20 hours to win $1,000. And so the winner will say, "Hey, I invested 20 hours to win $1,000. That's $50 an hour. It's well worth it. I'll do it." But you got to remember that there were 100 students each who worked 20 hours. That's 2,000 hours of work. 1,980 hours were uncompensated, right? It was wasted. And now you might say, oh, but they learned all these things. Yeah, but if, they were hoping to win some money. Now, if all of them got jobs instead, and on-campus jobs these days pay about 12 bucks an hour, right? So if they all got jobs instead, and they got $12 an hour, that's $24,000 of value that they could have produced, right? But instead, after all those hours, 2,000 hours of work, it was for $1,000 of benefit, right? So you see that. And so a lot of effort for a very small reward taken as a whole. So you can see that for government contracts, weapons contracts, transportation contract, all of that, the stakes are much higher. And the amount of waste then is much greater. And so conflating the negative and positive rights, thinking that they're all the same, they're all legitimate rights. Well, the cost of that misunderstanding is extremely high, right? And it's all the result of sloppy understanding, sloppy education, right? That people just simply don't need to know better. Now, in contrast to the positive rights, which are so costly, let's look at negative rights. Now, there are no costs to negative rights. I mean, in order for people to have these rights, there is no cost, right? People can explore ideas. They can engage in activities on their own dime, right? If I'm going to do this activity, I'm the one paying for it, no one else is. And so I'm going to engage in this activity because I believe that there are real benefits, right? And so I'm going to reap the benefits of these ideas, these activities. Last Sunday, I preached a sermon that talked about no participation trophies, right? Even if you didn't listen to it, you can kind of look at the title and say, oh, okay, so clearly we're not, he's not advocating for participation trophies. Today, I asked the sixth graders in my class if they couldn't win a race or a contest, what are their options? And, a bunch of them immediately said, you're either going to train harder, right, in order to win, or you're going to find something else where you are an actual competitor, and so on and so forth. And so if you really love running, but you're not a very good runner, you're not very fast, or you can't go a long distance, or maybe it hurts too much, whatever, then no matter how much you train, you're never going to be competitive. So you can do it for fun, but if you want to be a competitor in something, you have to find something else where you are a competitor. And, you can look at my esports episode, right? And so even geeks and nerds these days can find a niche for themselves. And I don't know if you've seen those drone operator racing videos. It's pretty crazy. And that government contractors are looking at that and saying, recruit that guy for modern warfare, whatever. And so there is, unfortunately, a market for certain skills which should just simply remain entertainment. And so my sixth graders, they know. I mean, they're not particularly like geniuses, right? They're not like the best and the brightest of the world, but they know it's pretty obvious. It's a natural thing for everyone to realize that all of us can't be engineers. Not all of us love math the way engineers probably should, right? But we can find something that we can excel in and do it. I remember as a young man, I realized what the high school I went to, I couldn't even make JV, right? So among Asians, I was lightning fast back in the day, okay, when I was 18. I used to pretend to say, in all of Philadelphia, there is no other Korean that can run as fast as me, right? And maybe it was true, but there weren't that many Koreans that actually did track. So, I mean, it was a pretty safe thing to say. But I could not compete against everyone else in my high school, right? They were bigger, they were faster. It was crazy, right? I couldn't even make JV, okay? But then I discovered sports, different sports like lacrosse. And there, I wasn't the best, but I didn't look bad either. So I was able to enjoy it, right? And so people naturally find something where they can excel, be near the top, or be competitive. And that is American exceptionalism, right? That I talked about not that long ago, right? The exceptionalism of America is not race-based. It's not, you know, like the water is better here. It's not that. It's because we have freedom here, and people are free to find something that they can turn into something positive, something good, um, and that freedom, that maximum availability of freedom, the freedom to succeed, but also the freedom to fail, learn your lesson, and then find something else or do better. Okay. And so that American exceptionalism, what made America so exceptional was the freedom. So negative rights come with freedom, right? We believe freely. We speak freely. We associate with people we want to freely. And from those free choices come the ideas, come the motivation, the inspiration that leads to innovation. Now, most people will believe that their ideas are wonderful, and so they try to take it to the market. But what do the rest of the people say? And everyone else also has a choice. They can exercise choice. And we are free to choose. And people rarely intentionally, consistently make choices which result in poverty and war. People generally avoid war, right? They generally avoid poverty because they just simply don't like these two options. So perhaps it's not so coincidental that poverty and war are pretty much the standard in our society today, or they're on the rise. I heard on Judge Napolitano's podcast that a lot of the guests that he has there, that it would be extremely hard for Donald Trump to end the wars because of how deeply entrenched the pro-war element is in government. I don't know if he released the Epstein files, maybe, that those walls would come down pretty quickly. But maybe Trump knows what he's doing. Maybe he's playing 4D chess. Who knows? But maybe he's running out of time. There are tremors in the market, right? Deep seek, gold repatriation, commercial housing bubble bursting, the national debt, Japan's finance market, Deutsche Bank having a steep decline in their stock value recently. So if everything goes sideways, hopefully there are enough people who understand freedom, the lessons of freedom, and when our society resets, it will reset back to freedom. That's it for this episode. Hopefully, you learned something, and that you like and subscribe and share with your buddies. and I'll talk to you next time. Have a great weekend.